Hello, and welcome back to the Cinderella podcast, where we watch and review every Cinderella adaptation we can get our hands on, discussing the same story over and over until we slowly go insane. I'm Liv.
And I'm Talon, and today we are super excited to share with you our first ever season wrap up, aka the Cinder-Emmys.
That's right. We will share this magic carpet ride, letting you experience all the highs and lows, laughs and cringes, and just sheer insanity that was our first season.
Let's dive into our first group of superlatives, the technical category.
So, first up is the worst premise slash framing device category. The runner up for this is Cinderella's Feller. This is the children's only Cinderella, which
Enough
is
said.
is a dumb premise. They're children. I don't want to watch a romance between children. It was terrible.
They
I
got
didn't
married at the end.
They got married. It was unpleasant. But the winner of the worst premise framing device is the Disney Cinderella 2. This is the straight to video sequel that nobody wanted or asked for. And just the framing device of the fairy godmother and the mice are going to tell a story about all the things that happened. It was just so clumsy and so bad.
The thing that I hated the most about Disney's Cinderella was the mice antics. And the thing that the sequel decided to just throw down all its chips on was the mice antics. Like they went all in, more mice antics.
Mm-hmm. It was a bold choice and it did not work out for them.
Next up, we have the best premise slash framing device. The runner up was, surprisingly enough, the third Cinderella sequel, the one we affectionately refer to as the Doctor Who Cinderella, in which the wicked stepmother gets a hold of the wand and undoes all of the things that happened. And Cinderella becomes an action girl and has to get the prince to fall in love with her again. Great idea, great premise. I loved it.
Time travel, horror pumpkin, the prince throws himself out of a window, there's a butterfly net that she catches mice with. It's fabulous. It's wonderful. It's a great premise.
And we actually have two winners because Liv and I could not agree. The more normal one is Ever After, in which the premise is that the brothers Grimm are collecting stories and this is being told as a thing that really happened. You guys know what Ever After is.
You know this.
And I maintain that the glass slipper has the best framing device.
I don't understand you, Talon.
Because that's the one in which they're silhouetted in these black circles and it's Cinderella calling her pal Sadie on an old-timey telephone and telling her the story, going, and you know what? Amazing A+ framing device.
I admit that framing device is a lot of fun and they use it cleverly. I thought they used it a bit too much, but I maintain that Ever After is the best because it's so gracefully done and it's so immersive. Every time I watch Ever After, when it cuts back to the framing device at the end, I'm always just, oh, right, there was a framing device. It was so excellently done that I forget about it every single time I watch the movie. So next up, we have the worst pacing of a Cinderella story. The runner-up is Elle. That is the country wannabe musical bad Disney Channel Cinderella. It was so bad. There just kept being Cinderella movie after the plot ended. And they had this whole extra tension device that just kept happening to us while we watched it. The pacing was dreadful, but the winner was The Slipper and the Rose. That movie, beloved classic though it somehow is, dear God, I'm so sorry for the listeners who really like that one. I apologize, but my God, the pacing, it dragged so long, and the Cinderella part was done, and there was a whole hour of the movie left in which nothing happened.
Well, politics happened, kind
But
of.
they didn't. Politics threatened to happen. Politics might have happened. Politics thunderclouded on the horizon, but didn't actually show up and give us a nice storm. The pacing was awful.
So for best pacing, our our runner-up is the Julie Andrews Cinderella. which is the original Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella. It's just a perfect movie. It doesn't drag. It has the exact correct amount of songs.
Hmm.
It's really, really good.
Goes at a nice
Um,
pace, hits all the beats when it's supposed to, ends when it's supposed to. Just genuinely a very nice ride, very smooth.
it's very satisfying.
Yes.
The winner, however, is Ever After because every moment is like an iconic moment and
Hmm.
every scene is just so interesting. And even though it's a fairly long movie, you feel like it's so immersive that it just goes by in a flash.
Oh yeah, it doesn't feel like a long movie at all. It feels like a fairly short movie. So next up is our worst music category. The runner-up is The Slipper and the Rose. It had one good song out of 14, and that song wasn't very good. I'm using the word good very liberally here. Everything got a reprise. The songs weren't catchy. They went on forever. That one lasted for 7 minutes. I'm still mad about that thing lasting for 7 whole minutes. I'm still pretty salty about it.
As you
So
should be.
so that's our runner up. We have a special mention for L because they made us listen to the I wanna be a princess song 5 full times, 5 entire times the whole way through the song. And I have not forgiven them for that. But the winner, hands down, Talon and I both agreed, is the 1965 Rodgers and Hammerstein. This is the adding insult to injury Cinderella. Every moment of that was painful. Every sound that was uttered hurt. They managed to ruin the stepsister song, which is one of the funniest songs ever. And yeah, just hands down, the 65 one has the worst music, even though it's a Rodgers and Hammerstein and has the same music as the other Rodgers and Hammersteins. It was
It's
really
just that
confusing.
you know what it's supposed to sound like, and then it doesn't sound like it. So it makes it even worse.
Yeah, I mean, it would be bad even if it was a standalone. It would be very bad as a standalone, but it's not. It's in comparison with two other ones that were excellent.
So for best music, our runner-up is the classic Disney Cinderella. It has some really lovely songs and then some kind of okay songs.
Mhm.
Our winner is the either the Brandy or the 57 version of the Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella. Both of them are really good. I lean towards Brandy. I like the more modern arrangement.
I like the 57 one. I think that Julie Andrews just has a better voice, and I don't like that weird Whitney Houston song at the end. So
I'm not prepared to defend the weird Whitney Houston song.
it's definitely the other Rodgers and Hammersteins win. You might prefer the Brandy one or the Julie Andrews one. We can't quite agree, but I feel like this is close enough that it doesn't really make a difference.
We also have a special mention for Sepia Cinderella. All of the songs were actually like very fun and very catchy, other than the main Cinderella song, which was kind of not my favorite.
Yeah, and which they also made us listen to 5 whole times.
Oh, it wore itself out.
Oh yeah, no, and it wasn't a strong song to begin with. But yeah, that movie did have a lot of really catchy tunes. I still have the Dizzy Lizzy song stuck in my head.
Okay, is that the one where she has really long legs?
Yep,
Because that one is my favorite.
yeah. Dizzy Lizzy, Disneyest gal in town. It's really catchy. So we finished with music. Next up is going to be the worst movie sets. The runner up is our patron only extra that we did this season. It is free on Patreon right now if you would like to listen to us do a Cinderella review where we have swears and we discuss a Cinderella that is more adult in concept. So Sixth Street Cinderella is a gender switched Cinderella that happens in a bar. It's 6 minutes long. It's insane. It's a trip. Seriously, check it out. It's a really fun review. There's
Don't let
definitely
the fact that it's coming up on our worst list
yeah, no, no.
dissuade you from listening to it.
So the reason it's on the worst movie sets is because they just filmed it in a bar. They filmed it in a hallway, and they did a fairly good job of it, but it's very clearly, oh, this is the back hallway of a bar. You don't
That
have a
wasn't
set.
that wasn't my problem with it. My problem with it was that they really pushed the whole 6th Street thing so hard because it's like an
Oh,
actual street and like I
in
think it's
Austin.
set in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
So they were like, this is the 6th Street Cinderella, and we don't see 6th Street at all ever for any amount of time.
Mm,
And
mhm.
in the bit where the girl, the princess, is searching for Cinderella, our guy, they don't show her searching.
At all. They have this
They
great
just cut it.
opportunity. Yeah, no. They have this great opportunity to have her walk up and down 6th Street searching for Cinderella, which is his name, y'all. It's Cinderella. Yeah, no, they really should have showed us some 6th Street on the 6th Street Cinderella. That would have was a bit it was a bizarre decision not to.
It was very disappointing.
So the winner for the worst movie sets is, again, the 1965 Rodgers and Hammerstein, because I don't mind if you're gonna do a movie and just sort of paint a background in place, that's totally fine. But they had trees made out of literal conical styrofoam spray painted green. It was horrible. The sets were horrific. I've put on high school, but I've put on elementary school productions that are classier than this.
To make things even worse, the way that they shot it made everything look miniaturized. It was
Yeah.
that weird fish islands thing.
Mhm. It was
So not
terrible.
only was the set like dinky to start with, they also made it look like little toys. And
It
like that was not a comparison they wanted to be making.
it was so awful. I don't think there was a single set that I enjoyed, including the castle, the palace. I didn't like that either. It was bad. It was dumb. So, I'm watching this movie where the music is horrific and I don't like anything else about it. And also the sets are horrible. So there's not even in our worst cartoons, there's usually been a moment of, but the backgrounds are really lovely.
It's
Whoever did the
often the only
backgrounds.
saving grace.
It is, but this didn't even have that. And it frankly, that was I didn't realize I was gonna miss it that much. But yeah, that terrible sets.
Now, our best movie sets, the runner up is Aschenputtel, which was the German Cinderella.
Mhm. That
And
had such good sets.
it had very Alice in Wonderland vibes where things were kind of crooked, the lighting was very extreme,
Mhm,
and they shot it at like weird angles too, so it really
mhm.
emphasized the set.
Yeah, everything was all black and white tiles and muted tones, and then the lighting would suddenly go red and green. It was very dramatic. It was really beautiful, though. It very much set a scene. I loved that one. I think that the sets were gorgeous.
The winner though is again Ever After. Just their budget was phenomenal. Everything looks incredibly realistic.
Mhm,
I know I said this before, but it's super immersive. Just
agreed.
incredible sets.
Yeah, no, Ever After is phenomenal world building. I love it. So, worst animation up next. The worst animation runner up is our most recent Cinderella, Yeshen. This is the Chinese animated Cinderella. Animated, the word itself is a bit of an exaggeration to describe what happened on screen. I did not major in art or animation, so I can't tell you exactly what was wrong with it, but it was horrible.
Oh, let me tell you exactly what was wrong with it.
Please do, because I don't know the technicalities of what went wrong, but I know something went terribly, terribly wrong.
Okay, so when you look at anything that's animated, the two things that you usually notice is like the design and then the movement. So the design of the characters in Yashen is bad because it's like racially insensitive and
Oh,
just
it's so bad.
bad. But then also the animation itself, like the movements of the characters from pose to pose, is bad and jerky because it's made for TV and
In
they
the
didn't have
80s.
a budget in the 80s. So
Yeah.
it looks like just janky.
Yeah, it was bad. The winner of the worst animation, though, was My Favorite Fairy Tale. This is the retro anime Cinderella that tried to remake the Disney Cinderella and change the dress from blue to pink. It was, and I think the reason that this one we chose this one for worst animation is because they genuinely chose to just not animate big parts of it. So rather than watching the transformation of something, you watch somebody's face not having a reaction while sound happens off screen. You don't watch the carriage drive away to the palace. You watch the fairy godmother's face making no facial expression whatsoever. Creepy hobbit lady. As sounds happen in the background. It's just the animation that we saw was again very jerky and very just on a loop. It it was bad, but I think they just decided not to animate so much of it that it had to win.
That's exactly right. I
Yeah.
have nothing to add to that. Now, the best animation is next, and our runner up is the Russian animated Cinderella Zolushka. That one had the very limpid
Wispy.
eyed, wispy, dainty
Mhm.
Cinderella and Prince, and they kind of floated up into the ceiling and had this cosmic dancing song situation
Yeah,
happen.
they had the floaty symbol of love between them.
Yes. That one was beautiful. The only thing that made it the runner up and not the winner necessarily is because a lot of the backgrounds were very dark and you couldn't really see all of the detail in them. That's like
Yeah.
my one tiny nitpick.
Yeah, but they were genuinely beautiful animations, beautifully drawn, the movements were beautiful. It was very surreal in a lot of ways, but it was a lovely kind of surreal, and I'm down for that.
It was like a very enjoyable viewing experience.
It was. I've watched it multiple times since we watched it the first time, and I haven't been mad about it ever.
The winner is the 1950 Disney Cinderella. It's just kind of technically perfect. The backgrounds are gorgeous. The design of the castle is so beautiful that in every subsequent Cinderella sequel, we complain about the fact that it's not the same castle as the first one because the
Mhm.
first one was so great.
Was so good. So good.
The animation is so fluid. Cinderella's face is very expressive, and just even the way they animate like her fingertips when she like moves and talks, it's incredible. It's a masterpiece.
Mhm. Most excellent. It would have been nice if they had just chosen to animate less mouse antics and
Yeah.
animated more Cinderella being fabulous. But hey, it's
That
a children's movie.
soap bubble scene.
The soap bubble scene is my favorite scene in that movie. I
Mhm.
love the soap bubble scene because it's so pretty, it's so creative, and the music is so good. It has no right to be that good.
It's stunning.
Okay, so next up is our most wasted potential category. The runner up of this one is the Mighty Mouse. And here's why. The Mighty Mouse cartoon is the third iteration of the exact same cartoon. The Glass Slipper is the second one. I didn't realize there was a first one, so we will be watching that in an upcoming season. But it's the same as the other two.
These are
Yeah,
all made by Terry Toons.
yeah. So they just made the same thing slightly different. It's got the same floppy, dopey Harpo Marx prints, and it's got the same. I mean, they're not the same because the Mighty Mouse one has a wolf and skis and the horse that comes to life is horrific. And just they could have done literally anything else. This was their third iteration of releasing the exact same thing. We have a special mention for Yeshen and Senorella, the Senorella and the Glass Huarache, because we were really excited about multicultural Cinderellas. I think the Yeshen story is beautiful and it's very different from what I grew up with as a child, and it's very different from sort of a Western telling, even, the German version versus the French version. The Chinese version is really different, and we were both really excited to watch a really cool, different cultural Cinderella. And the same thing with the Cinderella one. We were excited for, oh, I wonder what a Hispanic Cinderella story would look like. How would it differ from a traditionally Western Cinderella? And the answer was racism.
These ones had the biggest difference in terms of what we thought we were getting versus what we actually got.
Yeah, the these were some of the biggest letdowns.
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
yeah, the The winner of the most wasted potential, though, is the Selena Gomez Cinderella, the another Cinderella story. Because Selena Gomez can actually sing, and it was supposed to be about dancing, and so they picked a bunch of people who weren't that great at dancing, didn't show a lot of dancing, and Selena Gomez doesn't sing. So, I don't really even know what they were doing, or what they thought they were doing, or what they wanted to think they were doing, or what they told their mom they were thinking about doing. I don't know why you would put Selena Gomez, who actually has talent, into a thing that specifically displays and showcases none of that whatsoever. So that was a real waste of potential, and we were very disappointed.
Very disappointed. Our next category is the least memorable Cinderella. The runner-up is my favorite fairy tale, which was the retro anime Cinderella. That one was so bland that I could not tell you a single thing about it other than the fact that Cinderella was blonde, and I don't recall anything that happens.
Yep.
The winner, however, is Selena, because I managed to genuinely forget that I had watched it. When we were creating this list, I saw Liv writing it down in a couple of places, and I was like, that's weird. We never even watched that one. And then I went through and I read the summary on Wikipedia, and it still sparked zero recollection. It wasn't until I listened to my own voice reciting it that I was like, oh, I guess I did watch this.
Yep, yep. Um, yeah,
It's
so
incredibly bad. It's very bland.
yeah, I had managed to erase, probably 85% of it by the time I got to listen to our recording of it, and I had a similar thing of, "Wow, I completely forgot that that happened. Darn, I wish that had stayed forgotten." So our final category in the technical superlative arena, I guess, is the most fever dream slash most traumatizing. So the runner-up is the Mae West Cinderella. This is the glass slipper. This was incredibly hard to watch. The the pacing was manic, and it kept cutting back to the framing device with a Boston Cinderella talking to Sadie, who starts to go to sleep.
Brooklyn?
Brooklyn, sorry, I don't know I'm from the South, so it was genuinely just a fever dream to watch. And then Mae West shows up, literal Mae West, out of nowhere with no warning. And we've seen a couple of wolves show up from time to time. We would have been prepared for that. It was a little weird the first time. But just Mae West shows up, and then the prince is Harpo Marx. And then Mae West gets the prince? And it I am still drawing connections in my head, and I have a whole thing of red yarn and push pins that I'm just still trying to make sense out of this with, and I'm coming up with nothing. The special mention goes to Scroogerello, because it was literally a fever dream. The framing device was, "It's a fever dream," and, boy, it sure was. But we were talking about it, and we realized that the winner actually had to be Cendrillon, the 1899 George Méliès one, because we had to watch it. Not only do we have to rewatch it, which happens a lot on the short ones because there's just so much happening in a short period of time, but we had to watch this on half speed and quarter speed to make any sense of it. It could not be watched at real speed. So that one has to win just the most fever dream.
There was also a lot of people turning into clocks and jumping out of clocks and just
Oh,
moving menacingly.
yeah.
It was it was a lot.
And then the prince and Cinderella just leave into a church, and we stay outside watching an impromptu ballet. The whole thing was weird.
Yeah. Well, that concludes our technical category. Now something that we noticed right away was that there's an awful lot of variables in every Cinderella, dramatically more than we'd anticipated. So Liv, who for reasons that don't need exploring at this juncture, pursued a degree in math and specifically data analysis and predictive models. With that in mind, she decided to do the unthinkable and try to find the mathematical truth of Cinderella. So, Liv, what did you find?
Okay. Well, first of all, we only have 25 entries, 26, I suppose, including the Sixth Street Cinderella. So this is quite a small data set, so I don't have a conclusive formula
Oh, wow, you don't have a predictive mathematical formula for a fairy tale?
yet. I don't have a predictive mathematical for Cinderella yet. I will find it. The answer is out there somewhere. The sweetest formula I've ever seen is still inside my head.
Oh my god.
Moving on to some stats. This is my baby. So, there are different Cinderella types. There's the traditional one, the old style one, which we call the Old Testament one, the it's not actually a Cinderella, and the no magic one. Turns out that we both like the traditional Cinderellas the most, and we differ most on the not Cinderella. Talon, it turns out, really likes the ones that turn out to be not Cinderellas. I do not. I've included some transformation scene stats in case anybody loves stats. But so far, we've seen 48 mice, 6 fleas, 5 lizards, 4 rats, 1 dog, 1 frog, and 1 horse.
Incredible.
And so what we found is that if you're going to be a successful movie, there is a transformation scene criteria that you have to meet. To be a good Cinderella and a good transformation scene, you need at least 2 types of creatures, no more than 6 mammals, and no frogs. You can't have a frog. We also found that Talon and I feel very differently about what songs add to a movie. And the Rodgers and Hammerstein, the fact that we watched 3 of them and 2 of them were excellent kind of messed with the stats because those have a lot of songs. But basically, Talon's trend line of what grade we give a movie versus the number of songs in a movie is extremely dramatic. So if a movie has less than 2 songs, Talon's thrilled. If a movie has between 6 and 8 songs, Talon's thrilled. If a movie
Really?
Yes, that's how it worked out. I did the numbers. And because the Rodgers and Hammerstein screwed with everything, if it has more than 12 songs, you love it.
Do I?
You do. That includes the terrible
The Slipper and the Rose?
yeah, there's a difference between the number of songs and the number of reprises. So this is just the number of discrete songs, not
Oh,
reprises.
I do like
So,
variety.
yeah. So that's really fun. My trend line is very boring. I really don't care how many songs you put in a Cinderella.
I feel like I'm getting my horoscope read.
So also I found a disturbing trend of not naming people. So of our movies, we have 6 where literally no one is given a name.
I
And
hate that.
generally no one. And so of all the movies, and this includes the one where nobody's named, Cinderella is the least named character. She's only named 35% of the time. And so we feel very strongly that Cinderella should have a name. But ironically, the only movies that give Cinderella a name are by and large the non-magic Cinderellas. And we tend to not like those very much because they tend to be really terrible. Those are the Cinderella story and the Another Cinderella story. And we don't like those. So even though we genuinely prefer that Cinderella have a name, we like the movies a lot better where she doesn't.
Oh, we're so capricious.
So I also graphed our experience through this whole thing. And basically, it would be a great ride at Six Flags. It's been a roller coaster, but it has been trending steadily downwards. Talon had a much better season than I did. We agreed exactly 4 times on movie scores. Our biggest difference is 2 full letter grades. Interestingly enough, we just inverted them. So you gave one a B and I gave it a D, and then on the next one, you gave it a D and I gave it a B. We've both given exactly 3 Fs and exactly 1 A plus each. Talon, I did a bell curve distribution of grades. You have a very normal bell curve. It looks like it's supposed to look.
This is like very personal and I feel very vulnerable right now.
Well, here's
Don't
the
tell
fun
the
part.
people about my bell curve.
So my bell curve is awful. My bell curve is horribly skewed toward the you got a D. So my bell curve does not look like a curve at all. It's terrible. We found some weird patterns, which we sort of discussed throughout, but I just wanted to mention them here because some of these were unexpected. We wound up having a pattern with frogs. Three of our movies either involved frogs or referenced frogs or were about frogs in some horrible way. Four of the movies had our fairy godmother appearing from flames, which is really interesting, just conceptually. Three of them had the coach leave from an interior room.
As
Two of the
in, the coach appears inside the house.
and then just leaves somehow. Two of them
Mhm.
literally have a Mae West character. Two of them make us listen to the exact same song 5 whole times. And 23% of our episodes had something racially very bad happen, and only 57% had a believable romance, which is
According
weird
to us.
according to us, but we're right. So there's an ideal length. If you're going to make a Cinderella, it needs to be between 85 and 90 minutes or about 120 minutes. Anything else, not so good. The best decade for Cinderellas was the 1950s, followed specifically by 1989 to 1999. Stuff before 1935 seems to be also doing well, but we don't have a ton of data points for that yet, so I'm excited to see what season 2 adds to my graph. The worst time to make a Cinderella is the 60s, followed by the years between 2000 and 2005. Our season grade average was a 76%, so you got a C, almost a C plus for this season. I'm mostly curious to see how this is going to add up with future seasons. And in case anybody wants to know, details on my spreadsheet, I have 3 different spreadsheets, one of which has 56 columns, the other ones have more, and I have 18 different graphs that graphs all the various parts of Cinderella. So that's what I do with my spare time. This is the truth that I have uncovered.
You're a deeply weird and nerdy person. Like inside,
Yeah. Yep. I am not going to attempt to deny this
I love
because
this about you.
I would burst into flames like a fairy godmother.
Liv, this is incredible. And thank you so much for keeping track of all of this information.
I thank you. I find these patterns genuinely fascinating, and I know there's an answer out there. So, listeners, watch this space for more universal truths as we continue this incredible journey.
Okay, well, now that I've been exposed to math in my fairy tale podcast,
You're
let's
welcome.
move on to something less scary. The story elements category, where we evaluate the elements of the base fairy tale itself. Our story superlatives start with least compelling Cinderella situation. These are the circumstances in which Cinderella finds herself, and our runner up was the Mighty Mouse Cinderella, in which Cinderella appeared to just be living by herself. And I guess we saw her sweep the floor once.
Yep, not compelling.
Yeah. Our winner is Elle, who's living with her uncle guy and has an internship where people are slightly mean to her, but she won't tell her uncle, who's also the head of the company, for reasons unknown. Like, she's fine. She could probably do whatever she wants. There are no obstacles in her way because she doesn't have an evil stepmother.
Yeah, no, she's not having an awesome time at her unpaid internship, but she's not being physically abused. She's not told she can't do anything. Her situation is fine, which makes spinning a Cinderella story around her very difficult.
I mean, to be fair, both of her parents died, and that's very sad. But the story doesn't focus on that at all.
No, also she's
It's all
decided,
about her day to day troubles.
yeah, but I mean, the story also decided that she thinks that her parents died because of her singing, that she managed to sing so badly that an airplane fell out of the sky.
Ugh.
Which, by the way, having listened to the "I Want to Be a Princess" song 5 times, I believe it. I believe that that could have happened. So, our most compelling Cinderella situation, the runner-up is the Dutch horse girl Cinderella. This is the one with Anna and her she had a horse farm, and now her stepmother and 3 stepsisters pretend to run it while she does everything. And this was really compelling. She's got a favorite horse, she has to take care of the house, and they show us a lot of repeated scenes of her just genuinely cleaning up gross stuff. Just these her step family are slobs and just leave trash everywhere. She's helping everybody do everything, and she has to stay there because she has no money to leave. She doesn't have a degree, so she can't go to college. She doesn't have any money to go anywhere else. She's genuinely stuck and treated very poorly, and the things that she loves are actively threatened with harm to get her to be obedient. So I found her situation extremely compelling. However, the winner is Aschenputtel, the German synthwave Cinderella. It was just so bad. Her stepmother was so mean to her, and she just felt trapped by her mother's last dying wish of, "My child, be patient and kind and suffer forever." It was creepy. I think we decided this one was just the worst because her father was still there. Just still there,
Yeah.
watching his child sleep on a cold tile floor under a thin blanket and be fine with it, and the stepmother just kept saying, "Oh, she's just at such a difficult age." And it
Ooh.
was so bad. That situation was really rough for me.
Yeah, both of those were really heart-wrenching,
Yeah.
but I don't know. They made me feel things.
Oh, yeah, so many feelings in those 2.
Our next category is worst transformations. The runner-up is My Favorite Fairy Tale, in which the transformations were, just not done. They didn't do the transformations.
Mhm.
That's the retro anime one. Our winner is The Slipper and the Rose,
Oh god.
because it had a terrible ballet scene in
Oh, yeah.
which
Mm.
human actors had these very lifelike mouse heads placed
Mhm,
on top of them,
mhm.
and that's how they signified that the mice were transforming into horses. It was like a half man, half mouse situation, and they were
Yeah.
so like well rendered. It was terrible. It was very upsetting to look at.
Agreed, agreed. That was a very upsetting transformation sequence on a whole bunch of different levels.
Now, we do have a special mention for just all of the times in general, like a blanket, all of the times that a mouse transformed into a human, but the human still retained mouse mannerisms. So anytime that that transformation scene showed us like a guy like crouched on his hands and knees,
Mhm.
I hated that. That was bad. I don't like thinking that that's still a mouse brain in there. Ugh.
So, the best transformations. The runner-up is the '97 Rodgers and Hammerstein. This is the Brandy Cinderella. The CGI was a little bit meh, but it was gorgeous. The way that her dress transformed, the way that the pumpkin turned into a really pretty carriage, just it was lovely. They didn't have a ton of technology, but they really made the most of what they had, and it's a very believable and very, just magical, enthralling transformation scene.
They used a lot of sparkly, swirly things, possibly too many.
I really like sparkly, shiny, spirally things. I feel like that's part of my personality matrix, and I'm always gonna be susceptible to that. The winner, we could not agree, but it is a tie between the Disney 1950 Cinderella and Zalushka, because the Disney one is just so classic. It's so well done, it's well animated, it's jaunty, it's playful, and it's really creative because they have a horse, but they turn the horse into a footman, and then the mice get turned into horses right as Lucifer catches Gus Gus, and Gus Gus the horse growls at Lucifer, and Lucifer's scared, and that was funny for me. And the Zalushka transformation was just so gorgeous. The design was so beautiful, and the transformation was just so magical. I don't remember which one of us preferred which one of these now that I'm actually looking at it, but we
I
might have
think
just
you were fighting for Zolishka and I was fighting for Disney
I
because I
think
remember that it was somewhat ironic.
yes. That's what it was.
I will say that both of these transformations are so incredibly sparkly, and it's really hard to do sparkly in an animation, and they look like they're glittering, and it's beautiful. Up next is the worst mice category. Runner up is the Betty Boop Cinderella because the mice turned to face the camera and started singing, and they had teeth, and the teeth were bad.
They were very human teeth.
There's a lot of them.
Hmm. Yep.
The winner is the Mighty Mouse Cinderella because it presented us with a continuum of mice from most mouse-like to most anthropomorphized, and it was terrible because we had different characters that landed in different places on that spectrum.
Yeah, the verisimilitude spectrum was too wide.
Yes. Yes.
If you're gonna have mice that don't behave like mice, they all need to be fairly similar. And this one had normal mice, just animated mice that you might see crawling across your floor, pulling the carriage, and then the prince was an animated mouse, sort of like you would see in the Disney Cinderella, and then Mighty Mouse was a little bit less mouse-like, and then Cinderella was just a person with a button nose and koala ears, and we had to watch all of that. And then the fairy godmother was a human person, so the whole spectrum was awful, and I hated that they were all on screen together.
It just kind of makes you question reality. It's like that thing in Disney cartoons where like Mickey Mouse has a dog, Pluto,
Yep,
but he also has a best friend, Goofy, who's also a dog.
yep.
That's
It's
messed up. It's messed up. You can't think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no.
Anyway, we have two special mentions for Cendrillon and Cinderella Speller, in that those two had the worst looking mice in the very literal sense of the word. They were just white plastic mice, or in Cendrillon, I believe it was just a paper cutout of a mouse.
Yep, it was just a paper cut out of a mouse crawling across the bottom of the screen, clearly held on a stick. And the other ones were just, again, gray plastic mice. They weren't colored in, they weren't painted. In no way were they even attempted to be anything other than just gray plastic mouse form. So, just
Just the
very,
worst mice I've ever seen.
yeah. We have best mice category. The runner up is the 1950s Disney because they're good. They're all a similar amount of mousy. They are relevant to the story. They turn into horses. It's nice transformation. The mice are fine. They do too many antics, but it's a children's movie. What are you going to do? The winner for best mice is Zalushka. The Zalushka mice are so cute and so mousy and so adorable, and they turn into the prettiest horses, and they don't do anything upsetting at all. So
Exactly the correct amount of mice.
yes, just there are mice, and now they're gone. Now they're beautiful horses, and we didn't show you anything terrible about how that happened. So yeah, Zalushka, best mice.
Our next category is worst dress, and our runner up is Elle because she wore basically a prom dress with bad rouging, and it was just deeply unflattering. It wasn't like an ugly dress, it was just not a good dress.
It was a cheap prom dress. It wasn't a nice prom dress. It didn't fit her very well, and it didn't really look good on her. Just it was just so blah for something that wanted to let us know that this was a fancy dress. It just failed so badly.
It just wasn't very special looking.
It wasn't.
Our winner has the opposite problem because our winner is the Hillary Duff Cinderella, Sam.
Yep.
She wore her friend's wedding dress and
Nope.
got it like dirty with mud and then flour on all of her Cinderella adventures, and it was just like a weird emotional beat, and I didn't like it.
Yeah, I didn't like it emotionally. I also didn't like it physically. That dress had weird rhinestone fake corseting and a weird sort of fringy thing along the bust, but not in the neckline where fringy stuff is supposed to go, and not under the bust where fringy stuff can also go, but legit just over the nipples. And it was a weird dress.
It
I
also definitely looked like a wedding dress.
Yeah, it looked like a wedding dress. It wasn't her wedding dress. It just emotionally I didn't like it. Visually I didn't like it. Thematically I didn't like it. No part of it was likable.
And that's how you win worst dress.
Yep. Conversely, we have the best dress. The runner-up is Cendrillon. This is the runner-up because it's a really beautiful 1980s dress, 1890s dress. This is really beautiful because it's an 1890s dress. However, this was made in the 1890s, so what they did was just put her in a beautiful dress that was modern at the time and put her hair up. And I really love 1890s dresses. I think they're gorgeous. She looks excellent in them, and it's just a pretty dress. The winner is the Brandy Cinderella. Her dress is so beautiful. It's this gorgeous blue. It has these cute little sparkly off the shoulder drapey things and this cute little blue bustle. And everybody in the Brandy Cinderella is somewhere on the blue violet spectrum. And her dress is a pale blue. So she really matches, but she also really stands out. And it's creative. It looks so good on her. She looks so good in it. It's so pretty. Special mention, Yeshen. Yeshen had a really gorgeous transformed outfit. Her dress was just so rich and so beautiful. It was such a transformation from her very plain clothes, and especially when compared with what the other fancy dresses were. Hers was just so much more elaborate and so much more detailed. I really liked her beautiful dress. I thought her transformation dress was really pretty.
So next up is worst shoe. Our runner-up is Senorella with the glass Hiracha
Oh
because it
god.
looked like a glass Adidas slide and it was upsetting and I didn't like it.
Yep.
Our
We
winner is
yep.
Sixth Street Cinderella because in that one, the shoe is a magic wristband that lets
Sparkly.
him into a club.
It's a sparkly wristband.
Yes, it's like a VIP wristband, and everyone's very impressed by the fact that he has a VIP wristband. It's about as dumb as it sounds, so
It looks
that's
like
why it's the winner.
it looks like a hospital bracelet wristband that's gotten dunked in glitter. It was terrible as a shoe.
We also have a special mention for Sam's phone, which was annoying because it was attached to her ankle, and I've never seen anybody carry their phone that way ever for any
Ag-
reason.
Agreed. Agreed. So next up, we have best shoes. We have a tie, runner up between Zalushka and Geshen. Zalushka had the tiniest shoes. They were so tiny that people were holding them in the very tips of their fingers, and it was just a lovely glass shoe. It was extremely dainty without being just, this just goes to a point. They were lovely. And Yeshen has these gorgeous gold platform shoes that are curvy and intricate and just really pretty. The winner, though, is the slipper in the rose, where the fairy godmother makes this absolutely insane magic water fire bunt cake thing. Then it turns into these shoes, which are so sparkly and they're so pink and they are glass, but they're so elaborate and they're just wonderful. In that whole movie, I loved the shoes. I was so happy about the shoes. I wish that we had spent the last hour of that just watching the shoes from different angles rather than whatever it was that actually happened.
Oh, like you put him up on a spinning platform like the Hope Diamond. You
Yes.
just live stream it.
Yes, that. I would have loved that as opposed to the last hour of that movie.
Next, we have the worst shoe montage. Our runner up is Elle, in which they went on a radio show and they tried to find her with her song. And they were going to have people call in and like sing whatever song she was singing at them. And they didn't show us that. They just
Nope.
fast forwarded through it and they just showed us the DJ being like, wow, that's wild. And then his next reaction, we didn't get a shoe montage, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no. We got something that could have been a shoe montage, but they also decided to not show it to us. Just, you did a bad job. That's not a shoe montage. Try again.
Our winner is the slipper and the rose. Did that have a shoe montage? I
No.
have zero recollection of a shoe montage.
So I think the reason that we made that one the worst is A, there's not a shoe montage, and B, he goes to Cinderella's house and tries the shoe on her stepsisters, which we don't see, and then he leaves without trying it on her, and I'm still angry about it.
That's adding insult to injury. Not only did they not show us the one fun thing I was looking forward to in that stupid movie.
Yeah, but they also he doesn't find Cinderella then. We then get another 20 minutes of nonsense where he mopes and sulks and then sings the "So it is, so it was, so it always shall be" 7 minutes of torture. And just
And then she tries to sneak into the castle.
it's the worst. It's so stupid. I hated it. I hated it. But what I didn't hate were some of the best shoe montages. The runner-up is the 97 Rodgers and Hammerstein. Really great shoe montage. Bunch of crazy tights. We loved the tights. Those were fun. The winner of this is Scroogerello because the princess Goldie has organized a very efficient line of gentlemen ducks, bird
Gentle
gentlemen,
ducks.
gentle ducks, to try on this gold hat. They have numbers. They line up in an orderly fashion and come to her. She's under a shaded tent. And the hat, if they are not the person to whom the hat belongs, the hat just beats them. The hat physically assaults them in some way, and I absolutely loved it. I thought that was stellar. We do have a special mention for Aschenputtel because they actually decided to cut parts of feet off in that one, which is really bold. That was a really bold move, and it was really effective, and it paid off, and it was very dramatic.
It
Um,
was wild.
it
It
was
was wild.
it was wild, and it really hinged. The plot hinged on blood coming out of the shoes, as the creepy doves told us multiple times. So that one was really just excellent. It wasn't our favorite, but it just we couldn't let you go without telling you again how interesting that bit was.
Next up, we have worst romance. Our runner up boils down to two simple phrases: I hate Austin Ames and I hate Joey Parker.
Yep,
Those are the two so called princes of a Cinderella story and another Cinderella story.
yep.
They're just douchey. I
They
don't
do.
know I don't know what to tell you. They're like vaguely self-centered and not super sensitive
Nope.
and just kind of like stuck up.
Yeah,
They
and
suck.
they both failed to recognize their Cinderella after talking with her face to face several times. They're very self-absorbed individuals. Yeah, we could not stand those two.
Our winner is Ty Parker from Elle, not
Oh
to be
God,
confused with Joey Parker.
God.
Um, this is because their romance was so underdeveloped that they just didn't shoot any of it. They showed them saying, "Hey, let's take a walk together." And then they show them taking a walk from like a distance, and we don't hear anything that they're saying because they couldn't think of anything that those two could possibly say to each other.
He takes her on a date to a hot dog stand.
It was
Ugh,
not very romantic.
it was they had a negative romance with one another. It was genuinely horrible. We had an interesting special mention though, Talon. Do you wanna
So,
do you wanna talk about what
so
happened?
my special mention for the worst romance category is Ever After because I can't deal with the prince, the way that he publicly shames her and just doesn't listen to her when she tries to tell him what's wrong. I don't know. I can't do it. I know he like shows up for her at the end, but it's not enough for me, and emotionally I can never get over that wall. So I think it's a bad romance, like in the sense that it's like not good for them.
Okay, okay. So for best romance, the runner-up is the Brandy Cinderella. Their romance is excellent. They're so sweet. They're so into each other. We like that they meet ahead of time before the ball and have a connection. They're just so sweet and so happy together. I absolutely believe that they're in love. It's wonderful.
They're so cute.
They're so cute. God. But the winner for best romance has to be Zalishka. Just with the traditional Cinderella love at first sight, they sold it. I've never seen love at first sight so dramatically conveyed. Just immediately, I believe those two are instantly soul bonded in love. They fly into the cosmos. It's great. Special mention for the best romance category. I also picked Ever After for the best romance because I loved their interactions with one another. I loved how she challenges him and how he challenges her to be outspoken and bold in a way that she has very much stopped being at home. I am with you that the public humiliation scene is bad and that he absolutely is a horrible person for not noticing that she is, sobbing and trying to tell him stuff. So I don't think he's our best prince, but I found their romance to be the most nuanced, the most complex, and ultimately the most believable. So that's why I picked
I understand what you're saying.
it.
Like the words, I understand the words, and then like emotionally, I'm just not there.
That's fair. That's fair. So, Talon, what is it about the Cinderella story that you find compelling? Why are you drawn to this fairy tale?
I like how simple it is. Cinderella's main qualities are that she's good and that she's kind. And because she is those things, her dreams come true and she gets to live happily ever after. And it's just nice. Like, it's really nice. It's
Hmm?
not about having to be smarter or better than anyone at anything. It's just when you're a good person, good things will happen to you. Chef's kiss. Beautiful.
Nice.
What about you?
So for me, it's the socialism. Hear me out. Hear me out.
Go on.
It's the concept that everyone needs help sometimes, and that doesn't make them less worthy or take away from their ultimate triumph. So she's good and sweet and kind, but she can't get to the ball. She's done everything right. She's stepped up whenever she can. She's made every right decision. She's genuinely done her best. And the world and circumstances have conspired to keep her at a lower level, to keep her down. And she just needs a hand. She doesn't need the fairy godmother to cast a love spell. She doesn't need to be transformed into a physically different person. She doesn't need to be given tons of money and castles in Spain. All she needs is access to this restricted area. That's all she needs. And when she has that, her own qualities win her success. They win her prince and her happily ever after. And no one thinks, oh, well, she just got a handout. She did everything right. She just needed help. Everyone needs help at sometimes, and it's completely reasonable. We don't think that she's a bad character because somebody had to help her do the thing. So I love that.
I really like that. I didn't think about it that way. Okay, well, before we move on to our breakdown of a season's worth of characters, I have some questions for you.
Ooh, okay. Hit me.
Okay, so if you had to date a Cinderella or a prince from any movie that we've seen so far, who would it be?
Ooh, that's tough. Ugh, I think I would have to choose Barbara from the Sepia Cinderella because she's so supportive. She's so creative. She's such a hard worker. She's so pretty, but she's just so passionate about what she cares about. She seems like she'd be a great partner. She seems like she'd be really fun to go out with and just, hit up a club, go sing, do some karaoke. Barbara's awesome. I love Barbara. What about you?
Okay, I kind of want to date Mae West.
Seriously?
I would totally date the prince or Brandy from well, I always think of it as the Brandy Cinderella, the 97 Rogers and Hammerstein Cinderella. Also Swing Shift Cinderella was like beautiful and had like this whole Rosie the Riveter thing
Oh,
happening.
was that the Jessica Rabbit one? That was the Jessica Rabbit, Rosie
Yes.
the Riveter, Cinderella. Yeah, no, she was a hoot. She seemed like a lot of fun. I don't think she has a lot of time for dating given that she's working two jobs, but she does seem like fun.
I could walk her to her jobs. We could see each other between.
Oh my god,
We'd
I love
make it work.
okay, my turn. So, which Cinderella Prince combo do you think has the least successful reign as rulers of a kingdom?
I feel like the couple from Zolushka are not gonna be making any good, like, political decisions. They're
Oh,
just gonna be staring soulfully into each other's eyes.
agreed. Oh my god.
Also, the children from Cinderella's Feller,
Oh,
because they're all children,
yeah.
and they're too young for the weight of a kingdom.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
How about you?
I would agree with you absolutely with Zalishka. I think they just stare soulfully into one another's eyes while the kingdom is overrun with Mongol hordes, and the kingdom just falls into ruin around them because they just can't bear to break eye contact. I also think that the Brandy Cinderella, that pair, I don't think they'd have a very successful reign. Hear me out. They seem too sweet and cheerful. I don't think they'd be able to make any hard decisions. I don't think they'd be able to deal with some of the grittiness that's involved with ruling a kingdom and some of the really difficult choices that you have to make where there's not a right answer. I think they're just too much sweet and light and goodness in them. So I think if they actually had to be king and queen, I think they'd do a really poor job.
I could totally see them abdicating and just, like,
Oh,
escaping the monarchy.
running away to start a bakery or something? Yes,
Yes.
that's what I want to see.
Okay. Who do you think has the most successful reign?
Ooh. I think the horse girl Cinderella, Anna and Ludovic,
I
because,
can't believe you remember their names.
right, I'm good at this. I also have access to the spreadsheets. But but I think that they would be good. He seems like a serious and intelligent young man who just wants someone to share some of his passions, and that together they know about the realities of the world. They would be able to have sympathy with a lot of, the plight of the modern person, and I think they would make really good decisions and be very caring and empathetic rulers. I think they would do a good job.
Oh.
So what about you? Who do you think is the most successful in reigning a kingdom?
I think it's gonna be the couple from Ever After. I get, like, strong
Really?
power couple vibes from them.
Okay.
I think that they're gonna push each other to make better decisions. I think
Uh,
it could work.
Okay. Okay. I see a lot of yelly fights, but I think it could end well. I would agree with that. Moving on from princes and princesses and ruling kingdoms. If you had to have one of these stepmothers as your stepmother, which one would you pick?
Okay, is it terrible if I pick Angelica Houston from Ever After? I
Why?
love her so much. I know she's terrible, but she
Ah,
also felt like the most human. She felt like a
okay.
real person. And I don't know, I just, like, feel like maybe I could make her love me if I tried hard
You need so much help. Oh my god.
enough.
Okay. All right. All right. What
How about you?
I mean, Uncle Alan, obviously. That man is gorgeous.
Okay, remember, this is your step-parent.
Okay, fine. Bernadette Peters then. She was really fun. She seemed like she'd be really fun to mess with. She feels I feel like her meanness and her barbs are very much designed to hurt somebody who is sweetness and goodness and light, which is Brandy, which is
Mhm.
not me. I am an eldritch horror in training. I have aspirations to be a bog witch when I grow up. So I don't think that her barbs would really get me. And I think she'd be a hoot to mess with. And she's just a lot of fun.
Your angry duets would be, like,
Oh,
incredible.
that'd be so much fun, just like practicing angry duets.
Okay, I wanna know, what do you find to be the most annoying repeated thing in these Cinderellas?
Oh, there's so many. There's so many more than I expected. I think I have to go with the prince not going on the shoe trying on montage. The prince is supposed to be there. He's supposed to go and try on the shoe. it's so stupid to send somebody else because that somebody else did not dance with Cinderella at the ball, nor did they fall in love with her. It's so dumb to send someone else. The prince has to go and put the shoe on her. He's got to be involved with that whole shoe process. What about you?
I hate when the prince looks right at Cinderella and just doesn't recognize her at
Oh,
all. And
oh
there's
yeah.
no spark, nothing. And they like make hard eye
Mm.
contact and her face like falls.
Oh, yep. That's
We've seen that a couple times.
yeah. I think I would categorize that as heartbreaking rather than annoying, but I absolutely feel you on that one.
I hate seeing it. And we see it in the modern ones and we see it in the traditional ones.
Yep. It's all over the place and it's really upsetting every time. So we've seen a bunch of interesting iterations of fairy godmothers. Do you
Yes.
think do you think that there's a fairy godmother guild or academy and that the various fairy tales are all the equivalent of a doctoral thesis?
Interesting. Tell me more.
Okay, so in the Mae West Cinderella, normally the prince says, I will marry whoever fits the slipper. But they say, does this shoe belong to you in that one? And Cinderella lies. It's
Hmm.
not her shoe. And so maybe this is sort of like the same test that the fairy godmother in the slipper and the rose gave to Cinderella, where she, tested her to see if she was going to be a good person or not. And in the slipper and the rose, Cinderella, lets her in even though she's not supposed to, and gives her food even though she's not supposed to, and lets her warm herself by the fire even though it's small and pitiful and she's not supposed to. So she passes the test. But when this Cinderella falsely claims that this shoe is belongs to her, she fails the test, and that's why Mae West steals her prince.
Yes.
Also, this is a fairy godmother, which means that they're fae. And there's a whole lot of lore about the nature of deals that one makes with the fae. So maybe that's why
Uh-huh.
most of our Cinderellas don't have a name. If they gave the fairy godmother their real name, then they'd have their name and that'd be too much power and they could, transport them to fairyland and something bad might happen.
Okay. You've sold me on this. I'm
Really?
100% in.
Because, okay, wait, hang on, hear me out. There are only two traditional Cinderellas where Cinderella has a name, and
Uh-huh.
it's Scroogerello and the Sixth Street Cinderella. And
Uh-huh.
to be honest, both of those end on not great notes. Scroogerello ends with him not getting with Goldie, our princess. And on Sixth Street, they wind up together as hobos eating garbage out of the street. And they go, let's make it Facebook official. And he goes, it's complicated. And they go, they lived happily ever after, sort of.
Yeah.
So maybe those ended poorly because they did give their real names to the Fae.
And they're cursed.
And they're cursed now. I'm I'm gonna spin conspiracy theories about this forever.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Okay, what thing that we've seen would you like to see incorporated into every Cinderella moving forward?
Okay, so when we were first talking about this, we said that Cinderella should have a pet, but we just watched Yeshen, and I no longer think that Cinderella should have a pet. So, not that anymore. I really liked in the Rodgers and Hammerstein one where she knew her godmother before the ball, just as a godmother, and didn't know that she was a fairy godmother. I loved that connection. I thought that was wonderful.
That's really cute.
Realistically, I like it when the stepmother isn't just a caricature of evil. I like when she has something of a reason, something of a backstory, something of anything, because it's so boring for me to have an evil character be evil because their name is evil. And that's what the script says. I hate that. I find it so boring.
I like it. I like it when they ham it up. I don't know. I think that's fine. For me, it's always the dead father. The father has to be dead.
Oh
Every
yeah.
single time the father has been alive, I've been like, that man shouldn't be in this story.
Oh, agreed. God, I hate it when there's a father. Whew. So, what's one thing that we've seen in these various Cinderellas that you would just like to know would never be in a Cinderella ever again?
I would love it if we just solved racism and
Oh, yeah.
that never happened again.
Oh, for sure. For sure, for sure.
I also don't love it when there's a secondary villain. I feel like it's distracting usually. It's been pulled off okay a couple of times, but usually it just divides the screen time from everything else, and it's just frustrating.
Agreed. Yeah.
How about you?
Wolves, man. I don't think Cinderella should have wolves. I mean, obviously, I would prefer it if Cinderella's also never had racism, but you covered that already. So wolves, and I'm just going to go ahead and say this. It's only happened once, but I never want it to happen again. Cameos. No one should
I would
ever do
count
it.
Mae West as a cameo.
Now I'm just mad because I liked Mae West. But again, that was very disruptive for me. I would have been happier with that had it not been literally Mae West. I mean, the fact that it was Mae West made me happy because I love Mae West, but as a story, I found it extremely distracting and it destroyed the unity of the story for me because I kept being distracted about why Mae West had wound up in a Cinderella as a fairy godmother. So
In the
cameos
past.
in the past. So cameos. I don't like cameos. Don't think anybody should be able to come on and do a cameo in a Cinderella.
What fairy godmother would you like to have come help you out of a difficult situation?
Oh, Leonardo da Vinci, obviously. I mean, I
That's
guess
fair.
I guess if I can't have literally Leonardo da Vinci, Mae West would be fun, but I think she'd make things worse actually. So I'm gonna go with Rhonda. Rhonda from the Hilary Duff Cinderella.
Rhonda.
She's amazing. She's an incredibly supportive friend and mother figure. She's great. She encourages Sam to fight her own battles, but also steps up and helps her when she needs help. I think Rhonda's the bomb. What about you?
Okay, 100% to Rhonda. If I ever had a problem, Rhonda's who I would want to talk to about it.
Yeah.
But also, the ghost mom from the Horse Girl Cinderella, she was very nice. And specifically, I do mean her mom, not my mom as a ghost.
Yeah.
I would like the Horse Girl mom to appear to me as like a force ghost and direct me in my life and like tell me to look at the bright side of things and that sometimes life is like a fairy tale, maybe sometimes.
That's cute.
Regardless of the technicals, it's really the characters that make or break an adaptation for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree with that. So that brings us to our next category. So let's dive in. This is our character superlatives category. All right. So the best friend. The winner is friendship. We didn't have a winner. We just had a four-way tie for first. And it's Tammy, Kit, Gustav, and Carter from the Another Cinderella Story, the Cinderella Story, Ever After, and Elle. Those best friends were fabulous. They were very supportive. They told the truth when they needed to. They supported her when they needed to. They didn't try to get anything from her. There was never a stupid fight that had to get patched up. They were just excellent friendship right there. Well done.
I think their friendship is so beautiful, and for some of these movies, it was the only saving grace.
Oh, agreed. Hard agree.
Our next category is least compelling stepsisters. So runner up is the dog brothers from Scroogerello,
Oh god.
the
The pig
Bebop
dogs?
Beboop guy, and the one that liked burgers, and the one that was big and strong.
Yeah, I
Is that the
guess.
guys? Is that their
Sure.
personalities?
I just have them down in my notes as pig dogs, and I cannot think of them as anything else.
Yeah, so those guys, I didn't really believe anything about them. I didn't have a sense of who they were as people other
Nope.
than their like specific quirks.
Not at all.
The winner for least compelling stepsisters, however, is my favorite fairy tale, which is the retro anime Cinderella. because they just had dark hair and they didn't really have many lines, and I didn't know what their deal was, and they didn't really appear a whole lot.
They also weren't mean to her, nor were they ugly. So confusing.
Yeah, they were just there
Yeah.
sometimes.
Comparatively, the most compelling stepsisters. The runner up, I think, is going to have to be the second Disney Cinderella movie, Cinderella 2. This was the one that had Anastasia fall in love with a baker, and that's the only reason that we loved it, because she stands up to her mother, she develops a personality. We both really enjoyed that.
It was really cute.
It was. We genuinely liked that part. Could have done without the cat-based romance, but whatever. The winner is Ever After. Best stepsisters, hands down. I believe them. I believe what their motivations are. I love their interactions with their mother, how there's a favorite and a second favorite, and I love how they either grow and change over time or double down on their sort of innate spoiled behavior. Fabulous stepsisters. Special mention for the Brandy Cinderella, just for the stepsister song. It's so good. They're so great. They do a fabulous job.
They're so memorable, even
Yes.
though they are like very flat characters and they're just like they're very one-dimensional and they're supposed to be. I love them so much. They put
Hmm.
so much like passion into
Yeah.
their roles.
They bring so much energy to it, just so much personality. It's amazing.
Next up is best slash worst stepmother, just the most stepmotheriest stepmother.
Agreed.
That's
Yeah. Mhm.
our runner up is Lady Tremaine from the 1950 Disney
Oh,
Cinderella,
so good.
who is just terrifying.
She's very subtly terrifying. She does a lot of psychological stuff, which is very frightening for me personally, and very effective at creating this just ambiance of evil and malice without having to do physical abuse or something. So it's just
Mhm.
fabulous. And again, that voice actress also voiced Maleficent, and just mm, very powerful voice.
Yeah, just incredible. Our winner, however, is Angelica Houston from the Ever After Cinderella.
Obviously, just
She's incredible. She
she's the
brings
best.
so much nuance to that role that you almost want to like feel bad for her and you want to understand her despite everything she does.
Agreed.
Just an
She's
incredible, incredible performance.
absolutely the best. So we've also got fairy godmothers. We had a bunch. Some of them were really great. Some of them were terrible. So worst fairy godmother. The runner-up. I had to go with the godmother in the 1965 Rodgers and Hammerstein. This was the Leslie Ann Warren one. She's so scary. She doesn't blink. She looks like a lizard. She terrified me.
It's
She
not
did.
that bad.
It was so bad, y'all. It was so bad. Anyways, winner is the Mae West as a fairy godmother because she literally stole the prince. She did the opposite of what a fairy godmother is supposed to do and literally stole Cinderella's happy ending. So, worst for that, I guess.
0 out of 10, just a bad job all around.
Yeah. Special mention for the 6th Street Cinderella. We couldn't decide if this was the best or the worst. The fairy god person is the fairy god brother, and he's just really weird. I can't.
I thought he was very chill and he was like, "Hey man, here's a magic wrist bracelet. It'll get you into the club until midnight." That's awesome. That's a nice thing to do for a guy. It made his day, made his
Yeah,
night. He met a really nice girl.
yeah, it was just, I mean, he also got poisoned with a drink spiked with Molly,
Okay, yes, that also happened.
but yeah, it was weird is what I'm saying. It was the most extreme. We don't have a most extreme category, but he would win it.
So segueing right into best fairy godmother. So our runner up is Whitney Houston from the Brandy Cinderella. She was so charming. She was so playful with Brandy and the way that they sing together and the way that she went with her in the carriage ride over to like make her feel happy and secure and just like confident. I don't know. I thought that was beautiful.
I thought she brought a lot to the role. Agree.
Yeah. Our winner is Leonardo da Vinci from Ever After because he like literally tries to build her wings and he's just there to talk sense into everybody.
Oh yeah, he's the best, just hands down. So, coming up to our main characters now, princes. Worst prince. We argued about this a lot, y'all, but
Hmm.
the runner-up for worst prince is Joey Parker from Another Cinderella Story, the Selena Gomez one. He's just such a jerk. He's uninteresting. He's not that great at dancing. He does a bunch of extremely coercive, manipulative stuff to her. Didn't like that. We hated him. He gets
Hmm.
psyched up by shouting his own name at himself. He's just,
Hmm.
he was terrible. But he was not the worst. The worst was Harpo Marx from the Mae West Cinderella, with his tongue lolling out the side of his mouth and his eyeballs rolling in different directions and his little toot toot horn on his belt and his massive giant phallic floppy sword falling all over the place. I hated it. I hated every second of it. I'm getting tense just talking about it. We got to move on.
Flames on the side of
Side
my
of my
face,
face.
heaving,
Heaving
heaving
breaths.
breaths. So we also talked a little bit about who we thought the best prince was. And runner up is basically all of the guys from Horse Girl Cinderella. So the prince was cool, but also his friend Ahmed was cool. And also the vet, Christopher, he was really nice too. And I thought all of those young men are very nice and really supportive and helpful to our Cinderella. They were all very charming.
They were all very charming. I think they all had good, charming prince material to them. If the movie had decided to
Yes.
suddenly make one of them the prince instead of the other, I would have been completely fine with it.
Yes. Our winner is the Brandy Cinderella. He is the best prince. He has a very long name and I don't remember it.
Uh, Christopher Rupert, Carl Alexander. Yeah, I got some of it.
You got some of it. Hang on.
Vladimir, Windermere, Vladimir.
Okay, okay. I found it. His Royal Highness Christopher Rupert Vandermeer Vladimir Carl Alexander Francois Reginald Lancelot
Herman?
Herman Gregory James.
Yeah, he was fabulous. He was so sweet and so sincere and so just, he was a delight.
He was also very receptive to hearing like when he did something wrong, which is
Agreed.
like a lovely trait in a partner.
Absolutely. Gotta be open to change. So, worst Cinderella. The runner-up is the my favorite fairy tale, the retro anime Cinderella. She's just a nothing. There's nothing there. Nothing happened. She had no character to her. I couldn't bring myself to care about her at all. But the worst was Leslie Ann Warren, and it pains me to say that because I love Leslie Ann Warren, but she was the worst Cinderella. I hated when she was on screen, even when she wasn't talking. They either didn't lean hard enough into the terrible abuse and trauma of this character, so they just sort of hinted at terrible abuse and trauma and tried to make it colorful and cheerful, and that combination was wretched, and she decided not to bring any of her acting skills to the table that day. Yeah, worst Cinderella.
It was truly unfortunate. Up next is Best Cinderella. Our runner up is Brandy. She does an incredible job in the 97 Rogers and Hammerstein Cinderella. She is so compelling when she's sad,
Oh my goodness.
and it's a lot.
It's so much.
And she just brings so much joy to the scenes in which she's happy. She basically gives you the whole spectrum of emotion and is just like incredible. Not always like an amazing singer, but a lot of the times an amazing singer.
Agreed. Agreed.
Our winner, we had a tie. It's Julie Andrews and Danielle from Ever After.
So strong. Both of those just so powerful.
Both of those were very different performances, but both like made their movies.
Absolutely. I could not imagine those movies with anybody else playing the Cinderella.
And then our special mention is for the 1950s Disney Cinderella. just because she's so iconic and she's so sweet, but also playful and kind of stern. She, weirdly enough, has strong Julie Andrews vibes.
Yeah, she stands up for herself in a lot of ways that I didn't really remember her doing, and she has a lot of strength of character that they didn't really have to include in a 50s movie. So it's
Hmm.
genuinely very delightful. There's so many characters, there's so many different versions of the same story.
Or a completely different story masquerading as a Cinderella.
That's true. That's true.
So we've talked a little bit about platonic ideals, right?
Yeah. So Plato theorized that, quote, only ideas can encapsulate the true and essential nature of things in a way that the physical form cannot. Chairs are my favorite example. You know, you can have a stool and an armchair and a dinner chair and a rocking chair, and those are all chairs, but somewhere there is an ideal chair, the perfect idea of what it means to be a chair. Like the most chair that a chair can chair.
The cheeriest of chairs would be the platonic ideal of a chair, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So, in these past Cinderella months, I think we've uncovered some of the elements of the platonic ideal of a Cinderella, and I think we should talk about that.
Absolutely. So the father should be dead.
Yes, hard agree. In a Cinderella story, if the father is not dead, then the father becomes the problem. And it's not an evil stepmother, it's like an evil father, and then you have a whole Hansel and Gretel situation.
Agreed. Agreed.
I think that there should be a comeuppance of some kind. I don't like it when Cinderella gets a happy ending and then also Wicked Stepmother and the stepsisters are just fine. I like it when something bad happens to them. It's satisfying for me.
Speaking of that, I think that Cinderella should get what she wants. I didn't realize we'd have to include this in sort of the platonic ideal of a Cinderella, but Cinderella needs to have the happily ever after. She needs her story needs to end happily. Fairy godmother can't just steal her prince. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that shouldn't have to be said, but this is where we are now.
Yeah,
I think that the prince should recognize Cinderella when he sees her after the ball. He can't just not recognize her. It's not cool. It makes me sad every time.
agreed, agreed. I I don't know if this is a platonic ideal, but you should name your characters, man. They,
Yeah, when they went through the entire Cinderella franchise, the Disney one, without naming the prince, and it got steadily more and more awkward as time went on, and
yeah,
they just committed to not naming him.
3 movies, 3 75-minute movies, and they did not name that young man.
He's a main character in one of them.
Yeah, he has lines and everything. Speaking of which, I think there should only be one love interest. Having a second,
Yes.
right? Having a secondary potential love interest or person that she interacts with as a potential love interest, it just divides the story, and the stories don't usually allow for that much of sort of divided screen time. Just don't do that.
I'm easily confused as a viewer, and I just think that there should only be like one romantic partner in a Cinderella story. Otherwise, I just get like confused like, am I focusing on this couple or am I focusing on that couple? I don't know who I ship anymore.
Absolutely. Well, there you have it. We are inching closer and closer, minute by minute, to uncovering the purest ideal form of Cinderella. We've had some surprises on this journey, though, Talon, and I'd like to share some of our more memorable moments before we announce our season bests.
Oh, absolutely. Let me tell you about my biggest letdown of the season.
Oh, please do. Please do.
So the first was Yeshen, because you specifically told me that it was going to be good.
I'm sorry. I said potentially. I did use the word potentially. I said it could potentially salvage our season, and I was wrong, and I already apologized for
And then my second biggest letdown
it.
was Swing Shift Cinderella because it was like going so well. It was so fun. And then at the very end, she ends up on a bus full of wolves whistling at her. That's
Oh,
terrible.
it was awful. Yeah, no, that was upsetting for me too. I didn't have high hopes for that one, so I don't think that one was so much of a letdown for me. For me, the biggest letdown was The Slipper and the Rose because I'd seen it on a bunch of sort of top 10 Cinderella lists, and I'd seen a couple of clips of it of just that's a pretty dress, and Somebody's behaving humorously. Just really, really brief clips. I heard that it was gonna be great, and it wasn't.
Mm-mm.
No. But we did have some awesome comedy moments in this season. So many of them just came from Ever After. Ever After had so many great comedy moments. My favorite, I think, forever is going to be a sapling cannot grow in the shadow of a mighty oak, Francis. He needs sunlight. He needs a good whipping. It's just my favorite moment.
My favorite is when Marguerite, the blonde stepsister in Ever After, realizes that the prince is into Danielle, her
Oh, yep.
the Cinderella, and she throws a tiny fit and she just is like so mad. And then she very like calmly sits back down and goes, "There was a bee."
Oh god, that moment is so great. The 97 Rodgers and Hammerstein, The Stepsister song.
Oh my goodness,
Comedy
yes.
gold. A Girl Like Her, it's called The Stepsister's Lament. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. It's 2 minutes, it's on YouTube. It's uproariously funny. I watch it multiple times, just that little bit, because it's such a great song, and that's the best way to do physical comedy, 'cause the jokes don't hinge off of anybody's weight or anybody's personal attributes. It's, "We're trying to climb through a hedge in big dresses, this is hard." It's so funny. They do it so well.
I'm also a big fan of Whoopi Goldberg as the queen, just squeaking
Oh my
in
god.
different tones
Oh my god, I forgot about
to
the
describe her
squeaking.
emotional state.
Oh, I love the squeaking so much. It was so great. Weirdly, I love the moment in Yeshen of the, "Well, why don't I have a good, beautiful daughter? Because I was born of you." I
That one is like peak snark.
Yeah, I'm a snarky person. I loved that. But we also had some terrifying moments. Talon, you wanna talk
Yes.
about those for a sec?
So there's this bit in the Mighty Mouse Cinderella in which the horse is like crying
Oh,
and they linger too long on it.
is it a real horse, Talon?
No, it's a realistic horse face on top of a hobby horse. So
Thank
like
you.
a big horse head attached to a stick, but they really animate it and
Mhm,
it just looks like so
mhm.
enraged and in pain.
And in terror? Oh.
Yeah, it's really upsetting and terrifying and I didn't like it. How about you?
I think it's a toss up for me. There were all the moments in the Dutch Horse Girl Cinderella where we talked about the horse potentially being injured and nothing ever happened.
Mm-mm.
Again, the horse was fine, but all those moments I was in a high state of tension that entire time, just nothing better happened to this horse and it was fine. I think the actual most terrifying moment was the doves in Aschenputtel, because I was in no way prepared for two terrifying doves to say in unison, "Ooh, what you see isn't true. There's blood in the shoe." I'm never gonna recover from that ever.
Okay, so let me get this straight. When they brought out the knife and started hacking away parts of the stepsister's foot,
Yeah.
that wasn't terrifying. You were okay with that. But when the cute little doves saved the day,
Uh, that's a lie.
that's what you
Cute
have a problem with?
cute is a lie. They're terrifying red-eyed demon birds speaking in eldritch voices from across the void of space and time. Those are cosmic horrors inhabiting a bird for a moment. No, hard pass.
Okay. Well, we also had some really sad scenes.
Oh, we did.
So, what were some of your most heart-wrenching moments?
So, for me, the longest running heart-wrenching moment is in Ever After when Danielle has freed Maurice from getting shipped off to America and they come back home. And Paulette is there and Louise, his wife, is there and they see him and they've been married forever and she never thought she was going to see him again because he was going to go die in America and he's come home miraculously and they all run to him and they kiss each other and they're so in love and they're all hugging and crying and they include Danielle because she's their family, but also the fish in Yeshen. Sweet baby Christ.
No, the
That was
fish.
so, and I mean, I knew the fish was gonna die. I had read the synopsis. I knew the fish had to die. But God, Oh, that was the worst. Mm. What about you?
Okay, I agree with all of that. But also in the Disney 1950s Cinderella where they tear the dress off of her that her mouse friends worked on so hard for her,
Oh, that moment
that
is
breaks
so
my
rough.
heart. The
Oh,
dad dying in Ever After, that
oh,
breaks my heart.
yeah. Nope. Every time, it makes me cry.
Every time I tear up every time I watch it.
Yep.
And then, okay, in Sepia Cinderella, the mean scene where the guy that got fired from the club for the love
Oh,
interest, where he sings a
oh,
parody of the Cinderella song at Barbara
oh
and is
God,
just
that was
mean to her for
so.
no reason.
Oh,
And she's just
that
in
was.
love
Mm,
with like a guy who's not that great, honestly, and it's
mm.
being thrown in her face.
Oh God,
Uncalled for.
that was so uncalled for. So we had a lot of songs this season.
We had
The-
a lot of songs.
Yeah, an unexpected number of songs, I would say. What song gets stuck in your head?
Oh my gosh, the Stepsisters Lament song. I
Absolutely.
possibly because I just listened to it for fun and then it gets stuck in my head and then I listen to it again. But I definitely have caught myself with a Wolfie stuck in my head
Oh my
from
God.
Swing Shift Cinderella, which is a parody of I think you said Oh Johnny.
Yep, that's amazing. I love it.
How about you? What gets stuck in your head?
So the one that I'm okay with is I get the 10 minutes ago song stuck in my head from specifically the Brandy version. And because they just sing it so well and it's such a great song. And I'll find myself humming it as I, do house chores. But
Mhm.
honestly, the one I'm really upset about is the Mausoleum song from The Slipper and the Rose. It gets stuck in my head. And I find myself going, "Ho, ho, ho, what a comforting thing to know." And I'm just like, "No, no, I hate it. Make it stop. I don't like this song. I don't want this to happen to me ever again." And it's in there and it plays, but just that little bit, just over and over and over. It's terrible.
That's so funny.
Ugh.
And
So
also my deepest condolences.
thank you. Appreciated. So what were your most satisfying moments this season?
Okay. I really like when Jacqueline in Ever After is accused of having something to do with like the grand plans
Oh,
all falling down around the stepmother. And she goes, I'm just here for the food,
oh, that's
which
such a
is
great moment.
a rejoinder to something that her mother had said to her earlier. So I was like, yes.
Oh, it's a deeply satisfying moment.
How about
Con-
you?
Continuing with the Jacqueline theme, there's a moment in Ever After where Captain Laurent has come to tell the stepmother and evil stepsister that the king has requested that they arrive in style, and he knows that the prince has already married Danielle, and Jacqueline knows that the prince has already married Danielle, but nobody else knows in that household. So Marguerite, the evil stepsister, and Baroness de Ghent race off squealing excitedly to put on fancy clothes. And Jacqueline just closes the door with this very tiny little knowing smile. And honest to God, it's one of my favorite moments in the whole movie. It's so great.
It is incredibly satisfying.
I gotta say, I loved in Aschenputtel the moment where she's putting flowers in a little vase by her mother's grave, and her
Hmm.
terrible, still alive father comes up and goes, "Are there any room for my flowers?" And she just looks him dead in the eye and goes, "No."
Incredible.
That was a
Incredible.
that was great. You mentioned one of the heart-wrenching moments being the mean part in Sepia Cinderella. Agree, that was terrible. I hated that moment. But I thought that Barbara's reaction to him was really great, where she doesn't cry and run off. She just starts reading him the riot act and then hits him. I love
I
that.
mean, that was great, but you could tell that it hurt her.
Oh yeah, no. But I thought that her reaction was satisfying.
Yes, definitely. There are so many great moments and so many moments that didn't make the list.
And so many terrible moments that I never want to revisit.
True. Yes, that is also true. Now, before we get to our final Cinder-Emmy's best and worst reveals, dear listeners, we have a Patreon.
It's pretty great.
We have 3 tiers, including the evil stepmother, which for just $1 a month allows you early access to episodes.
as befits the magnificence of your glorious person.
For $3, you can be our fairy godmother and get early access as well as bibbity bobbity bonus episodes.
These are our full length episodes that are too exciting and salacious for our main feed.
And finally, for $5 a month, you can be our gender inclusive Prince Charming and get access to everything we've already mentioned, plus weekly Ever After Party episodes.
Those are the ones where we drink and then we keep talking about the Cinderella we just watched, and we also swear a lot. The season wrap up is actually very close in format to our Ever After parties, so if you like this, which we hope you do, check them out. There's also a free episode on our Patreon. It is the after party to the Selena Gomez Cinderella, so go give that a listen.
And now,
We are proud to present the very best
and worst.
of our first season Cinderellas.
Our first category is the worst animated Cinderella. So we did give out awards already for animation as a technique, but now we just mean like the worst Cinderella that happens to be a cartoon. Our runner up is the sequel to the Disney Cinderella. It's really bad.
It's
It
so
has
bad.
a terrible framing device and 3 stories in it, and each story is like more interminable than the last.
And it's not
And
well animated. It's
and it's not well animated.
and the music is terrible. We didn't mention it, but the music is awful.
It's just obnoxious. It was the most painful watching experience thus far, I want to say. It was just so long.
Wow, that's a strong take.
Now, the winner for worst animated feature is Yeshen.
Hard
Uh,
agree. Oh my god.
the animation itself was bad, the cartoon design was bad, it was all bad, made me feel bad, and I didn't like it.
Nope.
And I watched it twice.
Yeah, and resented every second of both viewings.
Oh, yes.
Also, I felt very deceived by that one because I thought it was going to be good.
I also thought it was going to be good because somebody told me it was going to be good.
All right. Well, next up is the worst non-magical. So, the worst non-magical Cinderella runner-up is Elle. It was terrible. There was no romance. Her situation is not compelling. They make us listen to the princess song 5 times. There's no shoe. There's an extra villain and an extra half hour of movie that nothing happens in. It was stupid. But the worst non-magical Cinderella was the Selena Gomez one. The stepmother was terrible, but not in an enjoyable way. The stepsisters were also terrible, but not in an enjoyable way. There was no music. The dancing was terrible. Everything was contrived and awful and manipulative. It was, oh, it was terrible.
It was genuinely awful. Next, we have the worst traditional Cinderella. Runner up, we have The Slipper and the Rose.
Oof.
You guys, it was just too long. Like, it was too long and it had too many songs that weren't good.
So
And
many.
then it had like a really sudden tone shift towards the end. And we had a whole different plot tacked on where like Cinderella was like, I can't be with him because the country's going to go to war. So I have to leave. And he had to go get her. It was like a whole thing. And I didn't want a whole thing. I just
No.
wanted a nice, simple Cinderella story.
And it didn't need to be there. It didn't wrap up any loose plot threads.
And the winner is the 65 Rogers and Hammerstein Cinderella because they
Oh.
had a perfect blueprint and they somehow managed to fumble it. I don't know how you can make a movie that bad off a script that made 2 such good movies.
There was not a single enjoyable moment in that movie. I thought that there was one, which was when I saw her dress, but then it lied to me because it showed me her dress from a distance, and it was actually an ugly dress. So it lied to me, and every second was excruciatingly painful. But we're done with the worst now. Now on to the best. So the best animated category. Our runner-up is Zalushka. It's fabulous. It tells the story really well. I believe the characters, I believe her situation. She's beautifully designed. The backgrounds, for all that they are very dark, are very intricate and lovely. It's very Night on Bald Mountain, kind of creepy. I really loved it. it was just ethereal and gorgeous, and I really enjoyed it. I think they did a fabulous job, especially given that they told the whole story in 17 minutes, which, as we have found out, it's actually pretty hard to tell a good Cinderella story in less than half an hour. But the best is the Disney Cinderella, the 1950s one. It's the classic. It's the standard for a reason. The animation is great. The music is great. The design is great. The technical everything is great. The pacing is great. There could be less mouse antics, but it's for children. It's just it's wonderful. It's iconic for a reason.
Hmm. Definitely. Our best non-magical Cinderella runner-up is the Horse Girl Cinderella. It was a really wonderful story. It was compelling. The way that the prince and Cinderella, I think her name was Anna in this,
Mhm.
bonded over horses was genuinely like very touching and very believable.
Yep.
And I actually enjoyed the stepsister antics. I thought the fact that they gave them like different traits was helpful, and they had like different hair lengths, and I was like, yes, that's what I need from stepsisters. So it was cute.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
Our winner for best non-magical is Ever After. It really sells the Cinderella story as a real thing that could have happened. Like that's its entire thesis, and
Mhm.
it really delivers on it.
Absolutely. It's classic.
We also have a special mention for Sepia Cinderella because it is not really a Cinderella story, but it
Nope.
is very good.
Yeah, definitely worth a watch. Just skip the cameo part. Um,
Ugh.
but yeah, genuinely a very fun movie. So, best traditional. The runner-up is the Brandy Cinderella. It's fabulous. It's lavish. It's fantastic. It builds this incredible world. All the characters, they just bring their all. Everybody brings 100% to this performance. It's beautifully done musically. It's creative. I love the world they've created where they just did blind casting. So everybody's different skin colors and nobody cares and it's never mentioned because it's not relevant.
It
It's
is so
beautiful.
nice.
It's so wonderful. The winner is hands down is the 1957 Julie Andrews. I will stick with this opinion until I die. That should be the classic. She is amazing. Her situation is phenomenal. There's a lot of humor in it. It was filmed live.
I can't get over that.
I
That blows my mind.
She has so much agency in her own story. I love that she knows her fairy godmother ahead of time and just knows her as a godmother. I love that she convinces her fairy godmother unwittingly, like she doesn't know that she's trying to convince this woman, just with the strength of her own creativity and desire to do this thing. She's phenomenal. I love the chemistry that she has with the prince. I love the chemistry that the king and queen have with each other. It's so cute. It's so believable. I love everything about it. It's perfect. I love it. It's the best. Wow.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, there you have it, folks. This was the complete breakdown and analysis of our first season. So, Talon, our podcast conceit was that we would be reviewing Cinderella's quote, until we go insane. So, I have to ask, where are you on that scale?
Okay, well, to co-op the alert code, I would say that we're in yellow for sure, possibly inching into orange.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you on that.
So, dear listeners, before we leave you, we have some discoveries we'd love to share with you. As you may recall, in the Hilary Duff Cinderella, Sam says in a voiceover at the end that Austin's dad finally, quote, got off his Trojan horse. And Liv and I were baffled.
Oh my god.
We ultimately concluded that it was a mistake and tried to move on with our lives. However, my pal Jamie is a hero and let us know that this is actually a football reference, which is why we missed it.
Yeah.
The Trojans are the USC football team, which is, of course, the school that Austin's father wanted him to go to. So it actually makes sense. Incredible. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie. It's still an incredibly stupid line, but I feel like some of my sanity has been restored, so thank you. Here's another discovery. The guys who wrote basically every song in The Slipper and the Rose are Bob and Richard Sherman. Bob and Richard Sherman also wrote basically every song in Mary Poppins, The Jungle Book, Winnie the Pooh, and The Sword and the Stone. The musical supervisor of The Slipper and the Rose was Irwin Kostal, who was also the musical supervisor slash director for Mary Poppins, West Side Story, The Sound of Music, Brigadoon, and Fantasia. So, I want to know what happened.
Oh my God. That's bananas.
Like, what?
But also, I have a theory.
Yes.
Okay.
Please tell me your theory.
So while they were working on all of these incredible, good, wonderful projects, they'd come up with a song and it wouldn't work. Or they'd need to cut a song for somewhere and it would be the song that got cut. And so they have this portfolio of all these songs that just didn't end up being good enough for whatever project they were working on. And so they threw them all together. And that's why none of the songs make sense like in sequence to each other. And also why they're all kind of bad.
Just a portfolio of rejects. My God, that makes so much sense. Well, on a more hopeful note, the writer for A Cinderella Story is Lee Dunlap, who is the writer for every single one of the Cinderella stories, except for Starstruck, the one that's coming out this year. So Starstruck has a chance of maybe being good. I'm really hesitant to say that after the Yeshen debacle, but it has a chance.
Okay. I'm a little scared of getting my hopes up, but I have to say I'm really excited for our next season.
Oh man, me too. We have a lot of cool Cinderellas coming up, including, but not limited to, the rest of the Cinderella story franchise. Tam Cam, The Untold Story, which is a live action, incredibly lush looking Vietnamese Cinderella with, I have come to find out, a surprising twist of an ending. There's a really great Carol Burnett Cinderella that's set in the 80s and is hysterical. And believe it or not, there are horror Cinderellas. So we will be watching something together, the two of us, called Cadaverella for our Halloween special.
Are you gonna be okay? Friends, listeners, Liv is a notorious scaredy cat, and I can't wait to see how this goes.
I think it'll be okay. You might have to watch it without me and tell me how it goes, but we'll give it a shot.
It'll be our backup plan.
Oh yeah.
Well, Liv, it's almost midnight, and as much as I like to keep talking about Cinderella, we both need a little break before we can dive into another season. Dear listeners, we'll be back in 1 month with our regular episodes. If you enjoyed this format with different questions and more analysis, remember you can join Patreon for weekly Ever After Party in-depth episodes, complete with adult questions, language, and beverages. Just go to patreon.com/cinderpod.
It helps us with our production costs, and we would love you even more than all our regular listeners. You can also support us by leaving a review or a rating, or suggest us to a friend. It's the best way for us to expand our audience.
Everyone, thank you so much for coming with us on this adventure. We'd love to hear from you. Seriously, it makes our day. So follow us on Instagram and Twitter at CinderPod, like our Facebook page, or email us at thecinderellapodcast@gmail.com. You can let us know if you have a specific Cinderella you'd like us to tackle, tell us all your Cinderella thoughts, or just say hi. Speaking of which, we want to say hi to Nicole from Florida, Sharon from Twitter, and to our two incredible patrons, Sarah and Rosalie. Hello. Thank you for listening.
Hi, Mom. Love you.
As always, our music is Bad Ideas by Kevin MacLeod. You can find him at incompetech.com. Have a good night, everyone, and we'll see you all next month for yet another season of the Cinderella podcast.